The Bengals signing both Higgins and Chase. They've solidified their offense by signing wide receivers Jamar Chase and T. Higgins to substantial contract extensions. Chase agreed to a 4-year, $161 million deal with $112 million guaranteed, making him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. That seems to be almost a weekly event now, somebody getting that distinction. Higgins secured a 4-year, $115 million contract with the first 2 years guaranteed. Are you surprised, Nate, that the Bengals were able to get both Higgins and Chase signed?
I'm shocked, actually, genuinely shocked, because as everybody knows, this is the cheapest franchise, or one of the cheapest franchises in the NFL right now. To sign a guy for over $40 million per year, and then a wide receiver too, making over $28 million per year to make him the highest paid wide receiver to ever in NFL history, and even potentially turning down $30+ million contracts from teams like the Patriots, who desperately need that true wide receiver one, who T. Higgins probably is, was massive for the Cincinnati Bengals. And now, because Jamar Chase and T. Higgins' cap hit now lowers because they signed these extensions, now they're turning their attention over to Trey Hendrickson to potentially sign him and do the trio, which Joe Burrow wanted initially. All the way back in December, he said that he wants to get all these contracts done. And during Super Bowl week, he was very adamant about getting these contracts done, saying that they desperately need to get all of their weapons, offense and defensive weapons, signed this offseason, because T. Higgins last offseason already requested a trade. Trey Hendrickson last offseason already requested a trade. And this offseason, he requested a trade as well. So they had to sign their big name players, and they did with these two signings, as well as potentially not trading away Trey Hendrickson, who apparently their offers for other teams, their asking price is monumental, and no team is honestly taking them seriously with their price to Trey Hendrickson, that they may overcharge for Trey Hendrickson, so they retain him anyway. He's already signed to the Bengals already. He just wants out. He wants to get that extension. But now I think we have to realize that now most of the attention falls on Joe Burrow, because he's the guy that pushed for these signings. He's the one that said, I'll take less just to get these guys signed. And now they have the highest paid wide receiver too, and the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history on their current team right now. But obviously the issue is the defense. The defense was abysmal last year. Let's bring up the numbers here, because while their offense was insane, their defense was laughable. When scoring 33 points, they were 3-4, the only team in NFL history to lose 4 of those games when scoring 33 or more points. Everybody else, 79-7. That's basically a 92% winning percentage. So Joe Burrow in the offense wasn't the problem. Everybody knows it was the defense. We all know Jamar Chase, Triple Crown winner. T. Higgins had top 10 in receiving yards a game, receiving touchdowns, receptions per game. So they are both top 10 wide receivers in the NFL. But there's two main issues. It's obviously with the defense. The defense was abysmal last year. The 25th in points allowed last year. But also we have to realize that the offensive line for Joe Burrow has never been good. And last season, they were ranked 29th in pass blocking and run blocking. And right now, currently, Alex Kappa was the 71st rated offensive guard out of 77. Cordell Volson, right now, he's the offensive starting guard right now. He was 50th out of 77. Orlando Brown Jr., he was 66th out of 81st. Amarius Mims, after Trent Brown went down, he became the 76th. So back-to-back, 66 and 67. And then Cody Ford, who is currently on those, according to the projection, on the starting roster, he was 72nd out of 81st offensive tackles. He right now is moved to guard. So right now they have a massive issue on their offensive line. So if they could secure that up, which they haven't done since Joe Burrow got there, they're putting a lot of pressure on their first-time defensive coordinator after they got rid of the other one. Right now they're falling a lot on Al Golden. So if they could shore those things up, well, they already have their weapons in place for the foreseeable future. We're talking about 5-6 years from now. So they already have Joe Burrow signed on the massive contract. They have now their top 2 weapons. They brought back Mike Gesicki. So the offense has been fine. You could work on the running game, and you could draft someone. If somehow Ashton Genty's there, you could draft him. But there's also a bunch of running backs in this draft that you could draft. But the offense is secured. That was the best thing for you. Now it's just about how the hell are you going to build around that defense? Because right now you have the most expensive 1-2-3 punch combo in the NFL with Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and now T. Higgins. So if you could secure that up, we'll see what the Bengals look like now. I believe they have the 9th hardest strength of schedule next season, this upcoming season. So we're going to see how they perform right now with a brand new DC and potentially a brand new slew of weapons, or defensive weapons, because their defense was garbage last year. So if they could do that, I'm not saying they go out and win the Super Bowl, but they should at least be somewhat secure. What do you think?
Well, I think that they have secured at least as good an offense as they had last year, which was pretty outstanding. But with this kind of investment, I think they have to expect that the offense will be even better. And Burrow thinks that he has another gear. He thinks he can shift up into another gear, and that remains to be seen. I think both receivers have wanted this long-term deals for several years, and they made a lot of noise about it. T. Higgins requesting trades 2 times, and Jamar Chase having his hold in where he went to the camp but didn't play, just hung out there, and I think that hurt the Bengals significantly in the beginning of the season. They got beat by the Patriots in the first game of the season. I think a lot of it had to do with the distractions from Higgins and Chase, who at the end of the day played in the first game of the year, but were they ready? I mean, they hadn't hardly practiced at all, and it showed. I mean, the Bengals got off to a horrible start, and I think that's what cost them the playoffs, because by the end of the season they were really playing well, and you saw Jamar Chase had the Triple Crown, which makes you think that, hey, the Bengals should have tried to get a deal done with him last year. They probably could have saved $20 million by signing him up before he had the Triple Crown win. Chase's annual salary, average annual salary now $40.25 million, sets the NFL record for non-quarterback compensation, as we mentioned, beating out Myles Garrett by $250,000 average salary per year. I think, as I mentioned, the deals prevent contract disputes from happening for the rest of the offseason now, and that was a distraction from them last year, which did occur for both receivers last year. Higgins requested a trade last year and then played under the tag. Chase conducted the hold-in and then ended the stalemate before the first game of the season. Joe Burrow now has the receiving weapons for at least 4 years if they continue to play well. Duke Tobin, director of player personnel, said at the Combine that the team desired to make Chase the highest paid non-quarterback, so they achieved that. We'll see how long it lasts. You had Crosby less than a month ago getting $35.5 million average annual salary. That made him the highest non-paid quarterback. Then Garrett topped that with $40 million a year just a week or so ago. And now Chase at $40.25. Who's next? Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. It's a big hit to the Bengals' salary cap, particularly in future years. They have to hope that the cap continues to increase. 4 questions, I think, to consider here. What does this all mean for Joe Burrow? Bengals matched their $275 million investment in him by retaining his top wide receivers. He's got to be happy about that. They gave him what he wanted. Burrow had said it would be a disappointment if Higgins was not signed, and at some point the Bengals have to stop great players from leaving the building. Well, they achieved that. They had lost safety Jesse Bates last year. He wound up being an All-Pro with Atlanta. They lost DJ Reader to the Lions, and that had a very negative impact on their rushing defense. The deals put him in position to build on his MVP caliber season that he had this past year. Second question, can the Bengals afford to bring back Hendrickson? He's a 4-time Pro Bowler, asked for a trade for the second time, which was granted this year. He's still with the Bengals, likely because the high asking price, as you mentioned, likely a first-round pick. Probably not going to get that. Doesn't happen for defensive players very often. His production is much higher than his salary. He's currently 10th average annual salary for edge rushers. Will a team be willing to give up a high draft pick, as possibly a first-rounder, and give him a salary close to Garrett's at $40 million? I don't think so. As you said, there's a possibility and a way to lower the cap hits now that the wide receivers are signed and keep.
Well,
him.
they already have. That was the thing about extending. It's not a way. They already did.
And keep him, but it will put a big squeeze on the rest of the roster, which I think is going to be a problem for them. What the rest of the league think about this? I think there was a surprise amongst the rest of the league trying to keep both of them. now a salary, average annual salary for both of them out there is $70 million a year. That's way more than any other wide receiver pair in the league. With Burrow more than $100 million. With Burrow, that's more than $100 million on 3 players per year with no help for the defense. They could have saved the $20 million, as I mentioned, if they had extended Chase before his Triple Crown season. They chose not to do that. If they move Hendrickson, they'll have to focus on the defense in the draft. What does the return on investment look like here? Well, the Bengals, they'll field a championship passing attack, that's for sure. But they did that last year. They fielded a championship passing attack last year. It's just they played so poorly at the beginning of the season. They dug a hole so deep they couldn't get all the way out of it, although they came close. They didn't exceed the 2024. Can they exceed the 2024 performance where Chase won the Triple Crown and Burrow had the league high 40, almost 5,000 yards passing and 43 touchdowns? They were 8th in points per drive. They were 6th in TDs per drive. They'll need to improve on that further to justify this investment, I think, particularly in the fourth quarter where they were minus 28 differential last year. So they got to play better in the fourth quarter. I think there's more pressure on this trio of players and on Zach Taylor too, because he's the play caller. Does this make them a better team at the bottom? That's the end of the day. That's the question. I don't know. Maybe not, given how the offense performed in 2024. They didn't make the playoffs. So,
hold on. Time out. So you're saying keeping the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, the number 1 wide receiver 2 in the NFL, somehow didn't make them better?
They were great last year. The offense
Jamar
was.
Chase has been great every year he's been in the league.
Yeah. So
T. Higgins has been arguably the best wide receiver 2
They maintained their core. They maintained the core.
Right, but
Did they make themselves better? Did they make themselves better? Why? Those guys, they all had great seasons. Can they do better than that?
Well, define great for wide receiver 2, but
wide receiver 2, Higgins, if you extrapolate his
I would
performance.
Take Chris Godwin personally.
Extrapolate his performance. He was hurt part of the year. The whole year, he had a fantastic year too. Can they do better than that? I guess if they stay healthy, if they all stay healthy.
I would personally take Chris Godwin at wide receiver 2. That's me. I still think T. Higgins is worth the money, absolutely. But here's one thing for you. What was your flip on the other page here? Flip the page back. Right here. That's was it the second point you made at the very top of the page about Trey Hendrickson. Can you read that for me again?
If they move Hendrickson, they will have to focus on the defense in the draft.
Right. And there was something about making keep going about Trey Hendrickson, because there was something about bolstering a defense, a Super Bowl caliber defense or something like that, if I heard you correctly there.
No, I didn't say anything about the Super Bowl caliber defense. I said they have Super Bowl caliber receiving core.
Correct, about that, right.
That's all they have, really. They don't have Super Bowl caliber anything else.
Right, and I completely...
Super Bowl caliber quarterback and Super Bowl caliber receivers. And Gesicki plays very well with them, too.
You also talked about how Burrow could take another step up. I don't understand how
he thinks he could. He says he's the one that said that. He says he believes he has another gear.
Well, I hope that's just being more clutch in late games, because statistics-wise, he threw for 4,900 yards, 43 touchdowns, and only 9 picks, and 70% completion percentage.
He's got to play better in the fourth quarter.
He currently has the highest completion percentage amongst quarterbacks in NFL history. So I don't know how much better he could do in a career.
Well,
if
those
that's what he's doing.
Stats don't tell the whole story. They didn't play that well in the fourth quarter. They were minus 28. They had some other negative stats there in the fourth quarter,
I can understand why, because they had to come back in nearly every game. They had 8 games. I think they had 8 games, they had 6 games of allowing under 20 points. If we increase that first of all, the Steelers nearly had every single game where they gave up less than 20 points, 20 points or less. If you make it 24 points or less, I think the Ravens had 11 of those games, or under 24 points. The Ravens had 11 of those games. The Bengals, I believe, had 8. So the defense in their own division, it needs to improve drastically. You can't keep giving up massive scores to other teams and expect Joe Burrow to save you. But I do think that maybe this actually dings up Joe Burrow's case, where now the argument could be made, does he need these top-level receivers? Now, I disagree with that take entirely, but you could definitely make that argument now about how Hall of Fame quarterbacks tend to raise everybody's talent around him. And Joe Burrow's having to retain the number 1 wide receiver and arguably the number 2 wide receiver too in the NFL. You could also make that case. But you could also say, well, Joe Burrow never had a good offensive line. The defense has been average. And honestly, this is what I've said before. You just need a level of competency on defense because they've never had a top 10 defense since Joe Burrow's been there. In fact, they've had barely above an average defense during their best years when they made the Super Bowl, when they made the AFC Championship game and lost to the Chiefs. So if you just give them a level of competency, give them a chance to give them a shot at having even a fighting chance to win games instead of having to put it all on his back with basically no help, well, then that's exactly what that's a level of success that is sustainable because they did it in back-to-back years. When you take a look at it, their defensive backs are not that great. They're ranked in the bottom 3 defensive backs. When you have Awuzie out there, you have Kendall Fuller, you have Stephon Gilmore out there, you have Shaquille Griffin, you have Tre'Davious White. Here's one for you could try on for size who's very young, who might not be demanding that much. Asante Samuel Jr. Now, the numbers, again, I'm a big numbers guy. He gives up about a 92.5 passer rating when targeted. That's not exactly what you would love to do, but at least it gives you some depth at the position because right now, like I said, your bottom 3 in cornerback group and your safety group also isn't very good at all.
They don't have a lot of money to go out and get free agents.
They have $28 million in cap space, which is 19th best in the NFL.
Yeah. So they maintained their offense as Joe Burrow wanted. They went out and signed both those guys to huge contracts, put themselves in financial constraints now if they want to retain Hendrickson. They did nothing so far for their defense and potentially lose Hendrickson.
Well, they added, I think, Oren Burks from the Eagles, who was a perfectly fine piece, a key piece of that defense. So if Oren Burks just sort of replicates what he did with the Bengals, that should add a level. I'm not saying it's going from missing the playoffs to winning the Super Bowl. You also have to deal with Jermaine Pratt, who requested a trade basically when the season ended. So if you could just convince him that, you know what, we're going to bring in talent, would you be able to stay? You might be able to convince him to stay. But right now, Jermaine Pratt wants out. Oren Burks is the only major signing that you have on defense. So maybe adding a cornerback or a safety, something like that. And obviously signing Trey Hendrickson back. Maybe he'll take a slight hometown discount because you're building something here. And now that you have proved that you could secure at least the top 2, besides Joe Burrow, the top 2 threats on offense, maybe you can entice him to take a couple million less. I don't think he's going to make top of the market money. He's over 30 years old. I understand he just had 35 sacks in the last 2 years, but he's also 31 years old. You're not going to pay him $40 million per year. Mm-hmm. You could try to get him maybe at $30 million if you could somehow afford it per year. Because right now, guaranteed, I think Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, the first 2 years of each of their contracts are both guaranteed, which obviously is something that is good for them because they get the money basically instantly. So I think they'll be able to do Trey Hendrickson. I think they'll be able to. First of all, you need to draft better. They have the fewest amount of scouts in their own division. So you need to hit on your draft picks. That's why the Eagles keep spinning out guys repeatedly, going from great team to great team to great team every single year. Howie Roseman's a phenomenal GM, and he can afford guys like Devontae Smith and Jalen Hurts and all this offensive linemen and the great defense. On top of that, a bunch of these guys are on rookie deals or they're super young anyway. So that's why you're able to crank out these phenomenal teams. If the Bengals can do that for 2 seasons, they will be competing for a Super Bowl in 2 to 3 years from now. But you have to hit on your draft picks. There's a couple good defensive guys early in this draft. If you could somehow trade up, which I don't think is going to happen whatsoever, but get a Will Johnson. If you trade up all the way, you can get a Mason Graham, which would be insane if you could put him on your defensive front.
You don't think that the ownership expects to compete for the Super Bowl this next year after they spent all this money?
Right now, you missed the playoffs 2 consecutive years. You're right now going for a playoff run, and especially with this defense, obviously, when you have Joe Burrow, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and you know the amount of money that you're paying them, you obviously expect the Super Bowl because that's what every single top-tier quarterback is expected to do. Bring your team a level of success, bring it to the Super Bowl, at least have a very deep playoff run. We did that for 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers coming off an Achilles injury. We expected him to win the division and potentially win a couple playoff games, and they went 5-12. Joe Burrow just threw for 4,900 yards, 43 touchdowns, 9 picks, and also their top 2 wide receivers each had a passer rating when targeted at of over 121. So when you have those guys and the way that this offense played, they were 6th in points per game, you expect the offense to at least replicate that to a level. You expect the running game to improve because that was abysmal.
It's got to be at least
the
as
offensive
good.
line
They
could be
have to
good.
be at least as good as last year. It won't be seen as a good deal. They
Correct.
have to
I agree.
They have to be better. They have to improve on what they did last year, which will be very hard to do. They have a new defensive coordinator. Maybe that will help their defense. But they need to strengthen the defense some more, and their O-line is a problem, as you mentioned.
29th total offensive line.
So they've got a lot. They still got some holes to fill, and not a whole lot of money to do it with.
Well, that's why you have to hit on your draft base. You got to have guys on rookie deals, 4-year or the 5th-year option when you draft them in the first round. 4-year deals, hope they hit. Because if you don't hit, like Amarius Mims was your draft pick, I believe, last year. He was not a hit whatsoever in his rookie year. He was 67th out of 81st offensive tackles. Their offensive tackle group totally out of 81 offensive tackles, they averaged the 68th best offensive tackle group in the NFL. Offensive guards, they were ranked 60th out of 77. So they were bottom 15, bottom 16 in the NFL last year. So it's bad. You have to fix that. You have to figure that out. Because right now your offensive line is still abysmal. Joe Burrow's never had a good offensive line. Your defense was above average at its very best. I think the highest defense you've ever had was 14th in the NFL.
And that year they had the Super Bowl run. Didn't Burrow get sacked? An amazing
Correct.
amount?
Jamar Chase broke free. Aaron Donald pressured him. If he had a half second more, the Bengals would have won a Super Bowl on a walk-off Jamar Chase touchdown. That'll probably be how that Super Bowl ended.
But
Joe Burrow
during
was
that
pressured.
playoff run, he got sacked an amazing amount of times.
Correct.
In those games, like close to 10 times a game. It was really quite impressive that he was able to withstand that and still make it to the Super Bowl.
He was sacked 19 times in 4 games. It was bad. Hi, everybody. Thank you for watching this clip of the Harvey Hour. If you want to watch the full show, you can by clicking the I in the top right-hand corner right now. If you want to take the show with you on the go, it is available wherever you get your podcast. We go live here on YouTube every single Tuesday and Friday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you hit that like button, that subscribe button, and the notification bell to get notified whenever we upload a video and whenever we go live.